All right, here we are. Good evening. I am Tricia Crowley with the League of Women Voters. And on behalf of the League, the NAACP, and the News Gazette, I welcome you to tonight's candidate forum. Tonight's forum will be the candidates for the Democratic primary for the office of City of Champaign Township Supervisor. Because of the pandemic, we are unfortunately not presenting this forum in person. We have received questions through our website, and we have received many questions from members of the public and members of the League, and we'll use those to ask the candidates. Due to limited time, we may not get to all of the submitted questions, and if there are multiple questions on a same topic, I have combined them, so you may not hear your question asked in precisely the manner you submitted it. Before we get started, though, I want to talk a little bit briefly about this primary. So this is the consolidated primary election. It's going to be held on Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. There is early voting, and there may be, but not conclusively, ballot boxes that you can put your ballot by mails in, vote by mail ballots in. The early voting websites are available, and times are available on the county clerk's website. Also, because it's a consolidated primary, the clerk has reduced the number of polling places because the turnout is expected to be light, especially in Champaign. And so please check your website, check the county clerk's website to find your polling place. Okay, so let's start. The order for the candidates is alphabetical, and therefore Rita Conerly will go first, and Andrew Quarnstrom will be second. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement, then ask the questions submitted prior to the forum, and candidates will have 1 minute to answer these questions. At the end, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Candidates will kindly refrain from any negative attacks on the other candidate, not mention the other candidate by name, and will speak only to what they plan to do if elected. So, Ms. Conerly, let's start. And the first question is
Tricia, opening statement.
Are we doing opening statements?
Opening statements. Oh, I'm so glad to have help in keeping me on track here. Okay, go ahead. Opening statements, Rita. And Michelle just flashed you the stop sign, so she's going to keep track of the time. And when you see that, please finish your thought and stop your comments. Okay, Rita.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Rita Conerly, and I am running for Township Supervisor. And I'm here today to provide you with the insight into this exciting time about my plans once I am elected as Champaign's next Township Supervisor. As a mother of 8 children, I know firsthand what it is to be a vulnerable citizen in a community with multiple needs. These needs have expanded beyond just the needs of SNAP benefits, housing, and financial assistance. We need more. Further, I also know what it means to be a vulnerable person, to firsthand experience domestic abuse, discrimination, lack of community support, and having no idea what resources existed or where to go for both me and my family. As a native person of this community, living in an area that has been identified as low income, underserved, and high risk, this is an area that I call home, an area that the Township Supervisor often sees citizens from. As a resident of this community, I have also had the experience of learning how to get by with the existing assets that were presented to me. However, it has never been clear of the resources that have existed to my family within my community. Learning this afforded me the chance to observe what is needed in at-risk communities. This is why I have decided to run for Township Supervisor, for access. Because what I have been doing is already many of the duties as a Township Supervisor. I have had the ability to serve members in my community who are at risk, who are low income, who are at a disadvantage, and who are oftentimes exposed to and experience trauma. First-handedly, I have assisted in restoring of water, as well as assisting people who have gun violence and other forms of trauma. It's only a person who is reflective in this community who can best advise how to deal with such things. Thank you.
This is my problem. Thank you, Ms. Conerly. Mr. Quarnstrom, 2 minutes opening statement.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and thanks to the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, the News Gazette, Ms. Conerly. I'm very honored to be here to showcase this democratic process, and I'd be remiss to not to speak to the attack on our democracy right now in DC. So the fact that we're able to do this here peacefully means all the more tonight. My name is Andy Quarnstrom. I'm the City of Champaign Township Supervisor, and I've been a dedicated public servant in Champaign for the last 24 years. 24 of them as a Champaign firefighter, and 8 of them as the Township Supervisor. I also serve on the United Way Board, CASA Board. I've been a Little League president and coach, little Cub Scout leader, and Neighborhood Services Advisory Board member. I'm married to my wife, Erin, who works for Champaign Schools, and we have 2 teenage kids. 8 years ago, I was elected to Township Supervisor when I beat a Republican incumbent handedly. Since then, I made significant changes to the township, and I made promises in my election, and those promises I kept over the last 8 years. We've increased transparency, including a website that has all the documents that anybody would need, including monthly agenda items, financial documents, applications. We have moved our township offices, which is one of the promises I made, to have now ADA accessibility, privacy, safe, comfortable location for our employees and our residents. We have increased our monthly general assistance grant over 20% since taking office. We've got a comprehensive rental assistance program that now includes hundreds of thousands of dollars for COVID rental assistance. And we've been a Unit 4 Summer Youth Employment Program sponsor. Lastly, we've done quite a bit with a nationally renowned homeless prevention program where we employ homeless individuals to do beautification and prosperity gardens work. And we purchase prosperity gardens to provide produce to those in our community in need. So I'm looking forward to this forum, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you.
Okay. First question, we'll start with Ms. Conerly. Could you describe what the Township Supervisor does? What are his job duties? You have to unmute yourself, yeah.
My apologies. So to my understandings and what I've actually read from the township's office website is that they serve some of the most poor and indigenous people in Champaign-Urbana. As Andy has highlighted, as my opponent has highlighted, that they do offer a general assistance program as well as a rental assistance program to qualifying citizens in Champaign-Urbana. What I would like to see is more of those programs expanded and actually outreach to citizens where they at versus coming to the office, which is supposed to be a hub.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Conerly. Mr. Quarnstrom, can you describe what the Township Supervisor does?
Sure. So the Township Supervisor is effectively the CEO of the township. Not only do we ensure that we have an annual budget prepared, but we also prepare our levy. We sign off on contracts. We prepare agenda and monthly meeting documents. We do human resource work. We work with legal to ensure that we are meeting all legal requirements. We ensure that all statutory requirements are being met, both at the local level, at the county, as well as the state level. I oversee the general assistance program. So we have 2 caseworkers that actually work with clients to provide the assistance, but I'm effectively, based on statute, in charge of that. And really, more than anything, I think I'm a liaison to not only other local levels of government, but nonprofits, community groups, to ensure that the needs are in fact being met of the citizens that we serve. So kind of a jack of all trades, I think, in summary. We provide, with a small staff of 4, we do just about anything.
Thank you. And we'll start, we change who starts first. So we'll start with you, Mr. Quarnstrom. Could you describe the assistance that the office provides?
So as I've noted, our general assistance program is a monthly grant for those that are unable to work because of a mental or physical disability. And effectively, we are bridging the gap between somebody's inability to work and their final approval for Social Security. Unfortunately, that takes years quite often. And so we provide that assistance until, in fact, they're able to receive Social Security disability assistance. We also have a very comprehensive rental assistance program that this year will have provided over $600,000 in rental assistance to our community. Much of that is because of COVID funding that we've received through CURES, through CDBG, and through ESG. And so those are the two primary assistance programs we have. Our See You at Work program, which employs homeless individuals for $10 an hour, is very much like a work fair program that you would normally find in a general assistance manual. But ours is more unique in that we employ them within our organization. And so we employ homeless individuals, and that provides them a financial assistance. And at the same time, we're case managing them too.
Thank you. And Ms. Conerly, could you describe the assistance that the Office of Supervisor provides?
Yeah, so I think Andy did a great job at explaining some of the assistances that they provide. However, my commitment to the citizens of Champaign will be a diverse administration whose focus will be on key issues that have plagued our community: homelessness, food insecurity, poverty, alcoholism and drug abuse, mental health, violence, health disparities, and other systemic issues that have been faced by the marginalized communities within Champaign-Urbana. Additionally, what I would like to see is advocacy and more outreach from the Township Supervisor's office, and I promise to do that as your next Township Supervisor. What I would like to see is for residents who are lacking education and or literacy, that we provide advocacy and support with employment and housing searches, unemployment, applying for Social Security, medical and or SNAP benefits, tax filing referrals, free phone services, or other social services that are available to them. So just the current programs that they currently are offering, I want to not only expand those, but go beyond what they are offering.
Thank you. Mr. Conerly, how would you evaluate how effective the office has been in providing general assistance within the township?
I would say that it has not been very effective. We currently have a homeless population of about 140 people. Upon my learnings of what Township Office does, I was advised that they served pre-COVID approximately 100 people annually. 100 people annually is not servicing the 140 people or citizens that have been identified as homeless. So I would have to say that it's ineffective in one, again, operating out of the office versus outreaching from the office and using the office as specifically as a hub for operations. If we are going out into the communities where the people have the need, we can have a greater reach and actually assess people based off of where they are living. That's what needs to be done in the office such as Township. We need to meet people where they are. We need to go into the communities in which they are living, and we need to assess them based off of what their needs are specifically.
Thank you. And Mr. Quarnstrom, how would you evaluate the effectiveness of the office in providing general assistance within the township?
Well, I'm sure I'm biased, of course, but I think we've been extremely effective. And a brief correction, we've actually provided for our general assistance program annually provide about 400 individual cases of general assistance. Our rental assistance this year, and I would argue this is more robust than normal because of COVID, has provided more or less 350 or 400 individual or family cases of rental assistance. So this year, over the last 365 days, we've provided more or less 800 cases of assistance. And 8 years ago, when I came to office, nobody even knew what the township was. Nobody knew where it was located. Nobody knew what they did. Nobody knew how to access the township. 8 years later, we are a significant player in social service provisions in the city of Champaign and Champaign County. We've partnered with other agencies. We've brought hundreds of thousands of dollars of not only local, but federal money in to offset costs, and we have ensured that those most vulnerable in our community are receiving the assistance they need.
Mr. Quarnstrom, if elected, what efforts would you want the office to prioritize?
So I've been reaching out to other community members and other local elected officials. And the one thing that has always come back to me, even prior to the election cycle, was the need for eradication of homelessness in Unit 4 schools. As we sit here today, there's a few hundred, 250-ish Unit 4 families that are effectively homeless. Now, that may not mean that they're living on the streets, but it does mean that they're living, they're couch surfing, they're living with family, they're living with grandparents, and that is inexcusable, and it's inexcusable in a community like ours. I have worked closely with Unit 4 schools over the last few years. We have very strong agreements with every social worker in every school to provide assistance for their most at-risk families. I think it's extremely reasonable over the next 4 years that we as a community eradicate homelessness in Unit 4 schools, and I've already committed to working with Unit 4 leaders to make that happen.
Thank you. Ms. Conerly, if elected, what efforts would you want your office to prioritize?
If elected, I think one of the first things that I want to prioritize is, of course, diversity and inclusion. I would want to make sure that our office is reflective of the citizens that are receiving the service of the township office. That is first. Additionally, I would like to see the expansion of the programs. I think that these are action items that can be that are reasonable and realistic within the first 30 days. Some of these items include things such as Andy noted, eradicating some of the homelessness. What I would like to do is plan to develop an emergency housing placement program for families that have been identified as homeless within the Champaign schools. I'd also like to see an expansion of the YSEP to a year-long program versus just being over the summer, also creating internships for students interested in social work, counseling, and community health. Additionally, I'd like to develop new opportunities in collaboration with Unit 4 schools to offer programs for our most vulnerable students. So those are just some of the things that I'd like to see. Of course, there are so many other ideas that I have as far as what township should be doing for our vulnerable people, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Conerly, it's certainly likely that as a result of the COVID pandemic that the revenues of the city of Champaign Township might be reduced. And if that is the case, where would you make reductions in the programs?
As far as reductions in the program, while that is something that I would not like to see, I think one of the places that we can reduce, or what we could do instead of reductions, actually is to plan a referendum to increase property taxes so that we, by 1%, I'm not asking for much, but an increasing of property taxes by 1% so that we can continue to expand programs, because we know that as the pandemic continues, that we are going to have a population of people who are even at more of a risk and have more needs. As a community, we need to reach down to the bottom and make sure that we are caring for the most vulnerable citizens, the citizens who are at a disadvantage, and being certain that we are providing them with just the basic human needs that they need to live, just to live and to survive.
Thank you. Mr. Quarnstrom?
Can you just repeat the question, please?
Sure. It's certainly possible, even likely, that as a result of the pandemic, the revenues for the city of Champaign Township would be reduced. And if that's the case, what kinds of cuts where would you make the cuts?
Yeah, so we actually already recognize that concern. And although we hope that we don't see those type of impacts on local government, I think it's fully reasonable to expect that. And so we've already done two specific things to offset potential revenue losses. The first thing is both the elected officials forego raises over the next few years. And then after that, we chose minimal raises. And so over the next few years, that equates to about a 6 or 7% per year reduction in costs. Most significantly, though, we have have an agreement with the city of Champaign where we contract for services such as legal, IT, some HR work, some financial work. And so that contract was renegotiated this year that will effectively save the township approximately an additional 8 to 10% per year. And the reason is that we've reduced our need and our demand on how we operate with the city. So we were able to reduce those costs.
Mr. Quarnstrom, do you have a plan for diversity and inclusion, and how do you currently connect with the community?
So COVID obviously changes how we connect with the community. Unfortunately, historically, we had very open access to our offices, and we appreciated having people stop by for anything. We had a lot of our local homeless individuals just come in and chat with us. Of course, our clients come in regularly for case management. But with COVID, we've had to enhance our website quite a bit. Most of our application process is now available online. All of the things that we do now are electronic, including DocuSign. We have a mail drop in the back. So we've had to, like everybody, evolve. And in terms of inclusion, my opponent has noted my lack of inclusion in our township offices. And I can't deny that lack of inclusion. There are currently 4 employees at the city of Champaign Township. And unlike many organizations that are able to have a robust and comprehensive plan, we're limited. And so some of the employees at the township were here long before me, and I can't just choose to get rid of them. But I do have a goal to increase inclusion in our offices as we move forward and we have vacancies.
Thank you. Ms. Conerly.
I do apologize, Tricia. Could you repeat the question for me? Thank you.
Do you have a plan on diversity and inclusion, and how would you connect with the community?
Well, I am native to Champaign. I am born and raised. I was born actually at Burnham Hospital, so the only hospital that was in Champaign. I think that provides me a lot of leverage in that I know a lot of people here in Champaign. I currently live in D1 in a community that has been identified as at risk. Over the summer and against the fight against social and racial injustices, I have helped to organize and lead many of the protests that have gone on in Champaign-Urbana. Additionally, because I am a parent of 8 children, and I would like to note 8 very actively involved in our community children, they have allowed me access, and they have put me in spaces and places where I have had networks of various people. Just a little bit about myself. My mother is Latina. She is from Mexico. My father is African American. So I definitely plan on reaching out to our Latino populations of people who face language barriers. So one of the other things that I would also like to do, again, and I'll just continuously press the fact that outreach is important. Getting out into the communities, finding out who has the need, identifying those needs, and doing the best we can to meet those needs.
Thank you. And so, Ms. Conerly, in what ways would you support the Hispanic population?
So how I'll support the Hispanic population is speaking Spanish, going into the communities where they live, making sure that we have flyers translated to Spanish so that they can read those. Also making sure that we have caseworkers out in their communities who identify more so with them. Again, my mother speaks she's from Mexico. She speaks full Spanish fluently. And she has also agreed to help me to make sure that we are reaching the Hispanic population of people. So I'm so glad that you asked that question because I identify as Latina X, and I'm definitely looking to make sure that we provide support for them.
Thank you. Mr. Quarnstrom.
Thank you. So over the last year, I believe just under 10% of our clients were Hispanic. Of those, I'm not sure of the Spanish speaking aspect of it. I have had to, and I'm sure my opponent has a much greater caption of the language than I do, but I'm able to provide basic translation to clients that come in or call for services. And so we haven't had any issues with not being able to provide services for Spanish speaking individuals. And moving forward, we expect to have the same programs that we have in place.
Thank you. Mr. Quarnstrom, do you feel it's necessary to be full-time as a supervisor, and how do you plan to handle that?
Yeah, so I have been full-time as a supervisor for the last 8 years. I work effectively 35 to 40 hours a week and have had no issues whatsoever doing so. I think that, the township demands somebody who's in the office regularly, just like any other job. And I've proven over the last 8 years to be at work, to be available. I've had council member from District 1 routinely says how responsive I am 24/7, 365. She calls me in the evening, she calls me on weekends. And so my phone's always on, and I will continue to do that. So I think absolutely a full-time supervisor is demanded, and I've been able to deliver that for the last 8 years.
Thank you. And Ms. Conerly, do you want me to repeat the question? Yeah, do you feel it's necessary to be a full-time supervisor, and how do you plan to handle that?
I definitely agree that it is a full-time position. I think that in addition to the 30, 40 plus hours that you must commit in office, I think that it's necessary to also be out on the streets. I don't consider, again, an office as a place other than just a hub for operations. It's most necessary that we are making sure that people are aware of the services that are available for them. Prior to this year, I had no idea what township office was, who they were, or what they did. I thought it was a not-for-profit organization. So I would definitely like to get the message out there to citizens at large that the township is here for you. The township is not specific to our most poor and indigenous people. The township is for people who are in vulnerable positions. The township is, and that's what needs to be reflected. That's what needs to be educated. And I want to make sure that as the next township supervisor, I will convey that to the citizens here in our community.
Thank you. We have reached the conclusion of our forum, so it's time for closing statements. You have 2 minutes. You're going to start first. Ms. Conerly.
Sure, thank you. So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and sharing with you some of the facets of my life that have demonstrated my knowledge and experience in working throughout systems that have existed for me. These same systems are systems that I wish to improve in our community. While I've provided a few examples of my life, my personal examples are what have driven me in realizing that I have both the experience and knowledge foundationally to work with others, especially the citizens that the township serves. I also want to state that I no longer view myself as a vulnerable individual, but one with a resilient and strength to be admired so much that people feel free to come to me when they have a need. That's the type of township supervisor that we need. I know that in this position, my goals and my passion would be able to help who the township serves. And I hope to also help those same people have the same self-expression that I myself now have. That can only be done reflectively. How can we expect those who have never experienced the trauma of poverty, the public health crises of racism, or being a minority to properly serve the individuals that the township serves? This position should be for the people to help the people. This office is not reflective of the people that receives the services. We need a supervisor that is dedicated to our close-knit community, not someone with one foot in politics and the other in their profession. With that being stated, I want to convey that my focus is 100% on the underprivileged people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Quarnstrom.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again to our hosts. Thank you to Ms. Conerly for being here tonight. Thank you for all of you who tune in the future, and don't forget to vote. In 2013, you elected me as the City of Champaign Township Supervisor. The promises I made then are the promises that I've kept. Our citizens deserve accountable government. They deserve decorum. They deserve somebody they can trust. They deserve to be told the truth. I've made sure that this has happened in Champaign. I've operated a transparent government for the last 8 years. I've provided extensive levels of assistance to those most disadvantaged in our community. I'll continue to do that as I operate under the City of Champaign Township and your Township Supervisor. My work here is not done, and our disadvantaged need a leader that can speak for them. I look forward to continuing to serve for you, and please vote February 23rd.
Thank you both for coming and participating in this forum. The forum will be on the League of Women Voters YouTube page. We have a YouTube page. I'm really pumped about that, and on our Facebook page. And it will be broadcast on the on UPTV, and you can find that on their UPT schedule. So I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, and the News Gazette, and especially thank our timer, Michelle Cooper, who just keeps us on track, and a special thanks to Jonathan Barnes, who has worked very, very hard to put these forums together. So thank you, and we'll see you for the next one.
Thank you all.
Thank you, ladies. Have a great evening. Thanks, Andy. Have a good one.
Thank you, Rita.